to Seniors Alive. This community television program at NCTV features people who work with seniors in our community and also features people who are seniors themselves and doing very interesting active work in the community. And this month we have another one of those people that fits both categories, Barbara Larson, and she is going to talk to us tonight about her program, Movement with Meaning. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Judith.
Thanks so much for coming in. You know, last month we talked with Evelyn Donaldson about her programs for caregiver support, Alzheimer's Outreach Project. And I know that you work very closely. You're one of the teachers in that program. You work very closely with Evelyn, but she's just one person. And I'm just wondering how, besides drawing on you as a teacher for support in that series, how you two work together as a way of learning more about who you are as a person.
Well, sometimes we might have the same client. And initially when Evelyn goes out for an in-home assessment, if she sees that the family needs more resources or needs to understand on a more profound level how to deal with their loved one with Alzheimer's disease or related disorder, then I follow through and work with the family more as a care manager.
A geriatric care manager.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you also have your whole program on Movement with Meaning, which is a more specific aspect of care management.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's that?
Well, Movement with Meaning is a program in a book that I created. The publisher is Health Professions Press. It's a specific program for people in early stage Alzheimer's disease or related disorders. So it could be someone with a vascular dementia, someone with a traumatic brain injury, someone with a Parkinson's disease. And it's a program that uses a multisensory approach in working with people in early stage. And what I mean by multisensory is I mean that we use all the senses. Mm-hmm. And that as the mind unravels, the body becomes the refuge.
And so what does that mean? Say that in a little different way.
Well,
so I really get it.
Okay. Basically, the person with Alzheimer's disease cannot rely on their thinking mind, especially as the disease progresses. Mm-hmm. But they still have their senses to rely on. So what I do is working with people individually and in small group settings. I'll be starting a class next month at Eschaton.
Good.
A weekly class, to help them remain calm, to help them use their body in a way so that they can use their body as a way of finding out what's really going on with me. How can I stay in touch mm-hmm. with what's going on? Mm-hmm. And secondly, or thirdly, I guess, would be because of the repetition and the kinds of things that we do in Movement with Meaning, is the long-term memories that get activated again. Yeah. And so the person then is able to start telling their story, so to speak, once they're relaxed, once they feel that they can trust their bodies.
So you do this work in groups as well as individually, the
Yes.
Movement with Meaning multisensory approach. Yes. Mm-hmm. And well, we'll talk a little bit more about specifics regarding the Eschaton class in a moment. One detail that we left out of the last program, and I wanted to be sure to bring up, and I know that you're interested in this too, is that there are these wonderful caregiver support groups in our community. And one of them is with the Sierra Nevada Home Care, the caregiver support group, which meets on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. at Sierra Nevada Home Care on McCourtney Road. And you can call there to the number we have been giving out before, 274-6350, for information and registration for that class. And then Evelyn, our speaker from last month, also runs a caregiver support group for people of faith, and it can be from any denomination. This is run at Peace Lutheran Church, 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Peace Lutheran, 841 Main Street. And you can also obtain information about that by calling Sierra Nevada Home Care. Thirdly, I should mention the class that is a community group called Adult Children of Aging Parents Support Group. I actually formed that group in Los Altos 16 years ago, and we have met and now are meeting here in Grass Valley for all those years, once a month on the fourth Thursday. So it's coming up very soon here. And it's at Quail Ridge at 5 p.m., open to anyone who is an adult child and feels a need of sharing and support. It's not really a leader-led group exactly. And people can call Quail Ridge for more information on that. Okay, so what would be an example of a movement with meaning multisensory activity? I'm still trying to get this into my brain and my senses what it means.
In the book, I give 4 examples of classes, and each class has 5 segments. Mm-hmm. And there's a theme. And the theme for the first class is the bee and the honey. Okay. And so the first segment is basically a mindful breathing segment in which we bring everyone in the room, or if I'm working one-on-one, a person just putting their hands on their lap, just doing a simple breathing technique, maybe by just counting in for inhalation and counting out for exhalation, and just keeping that rhythm for a while. And this provides a container on some level then to start the next segment. Okay. And the second segment in the first class is, as I said, the bee and the honey, is a poem by Emily Dickinson. And the poem is, the pedigree of honey does not concern a bee. A clover any time to him is aristocracy. Okay. And so it doesn't take that long for the participants to memorize the poem, because so many people, including myself, were raised in a generation when you memorized. Yeah. You memorized many things. Uh-huh. And so once the poem is memorized, then the third segment has to do with movement. And I'm just going to demonstrate a very easy pose that we do. So we either bring in yoga poses, or we bring bilateral integration poses that cross the midline, because it's so important, as you well know, that a person remain in their body and balanced and coordinated in the body. So it's the midline that helps us to stay coordinated, balanced, and focused. So what we do is basically just do a simple maybe chair pose, coming down first, just keeping it very, very simple. You know, arms open, palms together, down to the heart. And then we might add and then bend over like would be a chair sun salutation, that kind of a thing.
This is one of my most favorite yoga poses. I do this almost every day. I love it.
So some of the poses are in a chair. Sometimes we use the chair for balance. And then at some point when everyone feels comfortable, we will add the poem. So the pedigree of honey does not concern a bee. A clover any time to him is aristocracy. Okay? By using more than one modality, we're reinforcing that memory. Okay? And then the fourth segment of the class is using some kind of percussion instrument, or depending on the class, maybe a dance, a very simple kind of a circle dance or that kind of thing. So in this particular class, we're using the rhythm sticks. And we just start off by just a simple rhythm. And again, making up the rhythms as we go along.
And do you do the poem along with the...
Exactly. The pedigree of honey does not concern the bee. A clover any time to him is aristocracy. Okay? That's the fourth segment. And then the fifth segment is bringing in taste, touch, smell, to reinforce the theme of the class. And in this particular class, I bring in crackers with honey.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And the classes are a half hour, 30 minutes.
So they can accomplish all of that in 30 minutes.
Yes. And the best scenario is to do at least 2 or 3 times a week. Again, to keeping that repetition. It's the repetition that helps person remember. When we did the qualitative study at Highgate when I was writing my book, I trained the activities director, Ann Mincy's at the time. And she, for a month, 5 days a week, did the class with 7 participants. And then at the end of the month, the results were that the people came to class without having to be reminded. They memorized the poem. But thirdly, and I think the most important, is that the participants anticipated the next exercise or sequence without having to be reminded.
Wow. So for example, then, they did the breathing, they knew next that the poem was to be recited.
Right.
And then next they
knew the exercises, and they knew which exercises or which poses were next.
And this is early stage also.
This is early stage. And then Anne asked, the participants at the end of the month, what did they think about the class? And of course, there's one person who gets the acorn or the kernel of the essence of the class. And the participants said, I have enough to hold on to. So there's that container again.
Yeah. Oh, my. When my mother was first developing her dementia and she lived over on her own at Orchard Hill Apartments, I so much wish that I had known you then. I was busy commuting to Los Altos, but wish I had done some of this stuff with her. But she's more advanced now, but she wouldn't be able to remember the poems, but she could probably do some of it. Movement. She seems to be quite aware of her body.
Wonderful.
Well, so that's the bee and the honey. Just say what the topics of the other ones are without showing us, without divulging all your secrets here.
Well, one is we do one with the theme is, I'll have to look it up in the book here. The theme is having to do with tea. And like having a tea party kind of thing, and so we do that. We do the poem with that, and then we end up with the tea party and that kind of thing. One has to do with animals, one has to do with the outdoors and the beach, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Oh,
so
wow.
each has a theme with the particular. The sequences are the same, but what we do in each of the sequences changes.
So, Barbara, how did you get into this work? I know you've been in the field for quite a long time.
Yeah, over 25 years I've been in the field. I was a special education teacher in my previous life, I guess you might say, and worked in a multisensory approach with children and adults who had learning disabilities. That's how I was trained at Santa Clara University, where I got my master's degree. And so when I first met a person with Alzheimer's disease, one of the things that I really recognized off the bat was that problems with orientation, getting lost easy.
Yeah.
Well, working with children who have, orientation problems, we call it dyslexia. And so, the child has troubles with letters like B and D. They reverse them.
Yeah.
But on a more, what would you say, on a more body level, it also translates to when the child leaves the classroom, do they turn right B, turn left D, if you look at your body mechanics, to try to find their bike So I thought, okay, this is the same thing. Where is my body in time and space? That's really the question. And so the person with Alzheimer's disease is still asking that question. Where's my body in time and space? And so that's sort of where I...
What gave you the idea, kind of, or...
Yeah, because it was the same kind of a thing. It was the same issues. Where, again, if your mind is playing little tricks on you, what do you need to help ground you and to keep you focused?
Yeah. So once someone has worked through the exercises, the five units, did you say?
Segments,
No. How many different lessons are there?
There's 4 lessons in the book.
In the book,
Because
okay.
this is for basically healthcare professionals. And then I explain in the book that once you understand the concept, and it's pretty well, thoroughly explained in the book, and it's a very practical, hands-on program. Then by the time you're doing the 4th class, you have a relationship with the participants. You know them, and they know you, and you can ask for input. What would you like the next class to be about? What theme? Let's work on the theme together.
Yeah,
that
and
kind
then
of
make
thing.
up their own.
Right.
So how often is a cycle repeated? Like when do you get back to the bee and the clover?
Well, I don't really necessarily repeat it. When we're done with that particular segment, that particular segment can last 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Just depending on the class. And again, it's more, you have to intuit that on some level.
So you do it
Now,
time and
on
again.
an individual level, when I'm working with somebody one-on-one with movement with meaning, then I create a class that's very individualized. I'm working with a gentleman right now who's really in early stage, I think the 2nd stage of Alzheimer's disease. And he was an organic farmer. So the poem that I'm using with him is different than a poem that I would use with someone who was a school teacher or something like that.
Yeah.
So we do a half hour of yoga and different kinds of exercises and that kind of thing. And then we do auditory sequential memory exercises, visual sequential memory exercises. And then the poem, is different for him.
Yeah.
So it has to do more with the weather. If I can remember the poem is, the talk of the weather is nothing but folly. For when it rains on the hill, it shines in the valley.
Oh, you must have fun coming up with these little ditties.
Well, that's the teacher in me, I think, that likes to do that kind of research and that. Because each class, with each individual, everyone with Alzheimer's disease manifests it according to their personality and temperament. And I think part of the problem that I have with many facilities and such is that when we say we're person-centered, how does that translate? How does that, for person-centered program, how does that translate into creating a program that really works with that particular individual?
Yeah.
You have to have a connection with the person first. Before you start implementing anything or trying to superimpose an activity. And I still do some trainings that for healthcare professionals. And I always say, our elders are a walking library.
Yes.
We don't have to superimpose an activity. If we truly listen to who our elders are, those activities are in their very biography, but their biology. It's in their biology. It's in their blood memory.
Yeah.
And so we can work with each person if we just wait a little bit and listen.
You certainly see this in the taking of a ritual, like in the Christian tradition, communion to people with dementia, which is something that I do. And I'm just blown away by how people who can't remember much of anything except maybe their name and maybe recognize and name their adult children, when they get into the flow of the service, they get it. They understand what it's all about. They may be able to recite most of the prayer, the main prayer. And they really get to a depth of functioning there that is clearly touching them. And it's as if those types of rituals, for example, are held in a different part of the brain or something as chunks. I'm not familiar with the neurophysiology enough to know.
No,
how
it's in the cellular. It's in the blood memory, and I mean, you can have someone who's even in the later stages of Alzheimer's disease, and they'll remember the rosary.
Yeah, this is it.
They'll remember, not just certain prayers. They may be able to even, be able to still play the piano. They may be even to start to speak their native language.
And singing hymns, that's another thing.
That's singing hymns and that kind of a thing. So something that's so personal to that person will remain.
Yeah.
And that's the essence. That's where I say, get beyond the mask of Alzheimer's. How do we get to the essence of the person? Because it's very much alive and well. And during the later stages, the best way to do this is through breath work.
Yeah.
And working with someone through the breath, through connecting with that person.
Now, I know you said that the book is for mainly healthcare professionals, but what about training caregivers, spouses, and adult children to do these exercises with their loved ones?
I do that sometimes. It depends on the family and how supportive the family is. If there's a lot of support, then yes. But if there's not, I'm not going to burden the caregiver with having to do one more thing.
Yeah, well, that's right. You don't want to add to their stress,
That's
which
right.
is considerable.
That's right. So I think it's just real important. It's family by family. Again,
And of course, when you come in to do movement with meaning with their loved one, then that's a little bit of respite for the caregiver
Exactly.
too. In the good old 36-hour day, life that many caregivers have. I'm going to take just a moment and talk about the story of a person and some upcoming classes that are related to that. And then we'll come back to movement with meaning. You talk about the story of each of the people that you work with and how even with Alzheimer's, that story is still a part of their essence. I love that term, their essence. And our business, as you know, Gold Country Seniors Alive, is very interested in the stories of people too, though we don't usually work with people with Alzheimer's, maybe a little bit early stage. But we do have some upcoming classes coming here in Grass Valley, some free classes. There will be at Hilltop Commons a free introduction to journaling and memoir writing on Thursday, February 3rd, which I just realized will be after this show is showing. But there will be ongoing memoir writing classes at Hilltop Commons as well. And those go from 3:30 to 5. And then we have at Quail Ridge Assisted Living programs starting in February 28th with the free session, and then the following 12 Mondays, that is, from 3 to 4:30 there for creating your legacy through memoir writing. And it's about a special system that Jackie and I have come up with to help people focus in on the juiciest areas of their lives that they might be the most motivated to write about. So, back to movement with meaning. Barbara, I might as well ask you now, right while we're on camera, although I meant to do it earlier, if you would be interested in the Boomers and Beyond fair that they're going to be having in Yuba City in April. And there will be display tables, and I don't know if you know of anybody in the Yuba City area doing this kind of thing, but from my perspective, what you're doing is quite unique. I mean, I really haven't run into anybody even doing it in Los Altos and so on. So maybe something to think about. The conference will be a series of speakers and so on during the day, and I think those are pretty well been figured out, but there will be these display tables available. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit more. It'll be at Grace United Methodist Church in Yuba City, Saturday, April 9th.
okay. Maybe we can talk about it later on.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting word out about, other than being on our TV program, about the Movement with Meaning classes?
I live in a community that I'm very fortunate to live in. I've lived here for 32 years.
Hey, Nevada County.
And people have known me for such a long time. I worked for 20 years for Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center. And Evelyn mentioned that.
Yes.
And the Yes I Can classes that she talks about were brought in through Del Oro and me about 20 years ago. Okay. And then before that, I was the first program director of our adult social daycare program. Before it was called the Lutz Center. People remember the Lutz Center. And so my reputation, I guess, precedes me, which I'm very, very happy about. And I don't have to advertise that much. I mean,
word
I
of mouth
really
mostly.
don't. It's mostly word of mouth. I'm very fortunate that physicians referred, and I have the people in the social services refer to me, and people like you, and just people in the field. And so that's how normally the word gets out.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I will do a class. I have done classes for the Wellness Center. And that's when I feel like I have an inspiration of some sort and I really want to work on a specific issue or that kind of a thing. I did do a class this past year on Parkinson's disease, on the new big move theory that's coming out again.
Yeah, the big and loud stuff.
That's right. And then the year before I did a class on ambiguous loss for people with families and healthcare professionals.
Speaking of loss, we're about to lose time, and we're down to the wire here. I'm sorry to cut you off, Barbara. Should have asked that question earlier. I didn't realize I was digging into such a gold mine there. But anyway, I do want to thank you so much for coming and sharing all this, and I think there are great things ahead for your program and the work that Evelyn is doing. As we were saying, the silver tsunami begins to crash in upon us with the aging of the baby boomer generation. So we want to thank the crew so much at NCTV, and all of you viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you again next month. Goodbye.